GLP-1 inhibitors have blown the obesity therapeutics market wide open, and what a crazy market it is. On one side of the continuum, there's the billions of dollars being spent by the vanity crowd, people looking for a quick weight loss bump in advance of a wedding or a vacation. And on the other end of the continuum are patients whose lives quite literally depend on obesity drugs, those for whom losing weight, improving the vasculature, increasing insulin production, improving cardiac function isn't just a convenience, it's a necessity to address metabolic conditions that come with a very long list of comorbidities. This broad spectrum has all sorts of consequences on the space and how its players are approaching it. From the foundations of protein selection and design to indication selection and regulatory considerations to trial design and commercial strategy and more. It's a space that's fraught with a lot more big make or break decisions than most niche drug markets. I'm Matt Pillar. This is the Business of Biotech. And on today's show, we're talking metabolic health and GLP-1 alternatives with a guy who's charting a different course into metabolic health, Skye Bioscience Chairman and CEO, Punit Dhillon. We're going to get to know Punit and learn about Skye's CB1 inhibition play in the space, a play that's garnered a significant amount of backing from the likes of 5AM Ventures and Versant. Punit, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you very much, Matt. It's really a pleasure to be on your show today.
I'm excited to have you here, and I want to jump right into your kind of play in the space. Before we even get into obesity, you're playing in the biotech space, and I always kind of struggle with like how far back to rewind the backstory, and we can go back deeper than this if we want to. Feel free. But one of the things that jumped out at me right off the bat when I was looking into your background was the fact that you founded OncoSec. Now, you and I talked, I don't know, a week and a half, 2 weeks ago briefly, and I think at the time I hadn't realized it, but it kind of excited me a little bit because when I read about that, I saw that you transitioned the role after you founded the company. You transitioned that CEO role to a really good friend of the Business of Biotech in Dan O'Connor, who's been on the show a couple of times. He was my guest here when he was a CEO at OncoSec after you had departed, I believe, and he came on the show again in the same capacity at Ambrx, which was, I think, just in advance of his $2 billion exit with J&J. So I like to say that the Business of Biotech platform played a role in that exit for him. I'll give myself a little.
Absolutely.
But that was your first founding, I believe. You worked in biotech prior to that, but that was the first time you founded a company, wasn't it, OncoSec?
That's right. Yeah, I worked in buy side. Started at a venture fund and then moved into biotech in 2003, and then had the opportunity to found and initiate this company, OncoSec, which was really basically driven based off my passion on the experience that I've had in the pharma world or biotech world. And there's like this underlying kind of component of like, hey, what can we do to really address significant unmet needs in cancer treatment? I had previous exposure in solid tumor treatments, and I really wanted to take the next step of an immunotherapy approach based on really interesting data that was generated by Dr. Adil Daud. And it was using IL-12, where he saw a very strong efficacy signal in a phase 1 melanoma trial. So the idea was to leverage this cutting edge delivery technology to really enhance the delivery, such as DNA IL-12, and minimize the toxicity, which was because previously the approach was it was a systemic delivery of IL-12, which had its own challenges in terms of side effects. So the technology held an interesting promise. Patient outcomes really showed, the targeted approach was effective. It reduced the side effects, and it offered a great opportunity. We generated some really compelling data, and yeah, Dan is a fantastic CEO, and I'm really good friends with him. I have had the pleasure of following his success over the years, and was very lucky to be connected to him. I think in the summer of 2017, which led me to kind of have this opportunity to pass the baton over to him as the CEO.
Yeah, well, they say that good jockeys make good biotech businesses, and he's definitely a good jockey. So you were making right calls back then for sure. Just quick follow up on that. Like you mentioned that you had venture experience. You worked in you worked for an immuno-oncology company. Those are two kind of foundational building blocks, I'm sure, that gave you some confidence to say, you know what, I think I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna start my own company. What other, I guess, foundational building blocks did you feel like armed you to do that at that time for the first time? So two-part question. What other kind of building blocks like gave you the confidence to do that? And then the other side of the question would be, when you did it, did you realize, like in retrospect, where you're like, yeah, I probably could have used a little stronger chops in this area or that area
Yeah.
before I went off and launched the company?
Yeah, I mean, that was a unique situation. I had just finished a merger for a company called Inovia Pharmaceuticals and merged a company out of Philadelphia with a San Diego company. That Philadelphia was a private co, San Diego-based company was the pub co. So I had an opportunity to take kind of the technologies that we had put on the shelf and see how we can monetize them. And Oncosec was born out of that unique kind of circumstance. I think that the interesting thing for me as an entrepreneur was, yeah, I mean, at that time when I started that company, I was 29 years old. So there was this hugely different risk profile.
Mm.
And I think I having been in a startup environment, kind of really recognized the opportunity for agility with biotech leadership. If you have the right people around you, then you can really pivot. And in that business plan, what was interesting was we were initially focused on solid tumors, and then more broadly focused on skin cancers, and then we narrowed in on melanoma, and actually narrowed in further on the combination with PD-1. And then, um, so like, going from a wide to a very narrow in a few years gave us a lot of credibility. We were able to scale an organization from nothing, like zero clinical programs, to 3 phase 2 programs in a year, and then scale into a pretty large R&D pipeline, and then getting into registration trials. So as well as it was in a rapidly changing environment. So if you rewind the clock in 2011, immunotherapy in cancer immunotherapy was just taking off because you had Opdivo got approved. Not
Mhm.
Opdivo, sorry, Yervoy got approved from Bristol. It was the CTLA4, anti-CTLA4 therapy. And then subsequent to that was the anti-PD-1 therapy. So this was an opportunity to really evolve a business plan to look at the non-responders to the checkpoint inhibitors. And it really underscored kind of the need to build a strong, adaptable team, the value of a clear plan, being a public company, having, ability to have decisive leadership. Like those are the things I learned in that company, because I was a first-time CEO, and I got a chance to leverage some really good experience around me, because we had recruited a pretty large amount of large pharma executives in that
Mhm.
organization. So my CMO, chief legal officer, chief business officer, they were all ex Merck. So I was still probably the youngest person in the boardroom, and the youngest person in the management team. But it was a great experience, and really highlighted kind of the importance of working together as a team, and transition, leadership roles where it was needed. Eventually, with that registration program that we launched with Merck, it gave us an opportunity to move forward, and it ensured some sort of continuity and growth. And Dan took it from there. Unfortunately, that company didn't reach its data point, and that's what happens in biotech.
Yeah.
The primary endpoint in the registration trial wasn't met. In retrospect, the data was pretty compelling, but yeah, subsequently, the company is now moved on. So yeah, it's been a really good learning experience in terms of that. But collectively with that pharma experience, the Inovio experience, and then just being on the other side, being back in, I got back into buy side, and that's where I came across Skye.
Yeah, you came across Skye, and now you're exercising. We were just talking a few minutes ago before we started recording. You told me that you just hired the company's Skye Bioscience's first CMO.
Yeah.
So you're exercising those, leadership pick and placement chops now. So tell us a little bit about that, like your experiences with guys like Dan and the other teams that other team members that you've built. What's kind of become fundamental to Punit Dhillon around the procurement and placement of those leadership positions, like your new CMO, who, by the way, you just told me is also named Punit. So Punit,
Yeah.
we'll call him Punit too.
Yeah, he's excellent. The CMO just started today. So look,
Mm.
I'm again, I'm really, I guess, privileged to have had really strong mentors along the way, which I've kind of continued not only continued to leverage that previous experience, but my, I guess, principle in hiring is always hire the best people possible. So I tell my team this, we should always hire A people, and in the if we can afford to hire the best people that we can in the industry, and at the same time always hire better than we can for better than ourselves in terms of team. So that's the only way you can really surround yourself with the high performers and continue to scale at the pace we need to. Of course, there's always a dynamic that comes along with that. So you have to take the time to make sure that we don't compromise the culture that's required to kind of operate at that scale. But that's always worked out for the way that my hiring policy is that A people hire A people and better, and don't make any compromise on that hiring. We have been really successful of also leveraging kind of this broader network, right? So I'm lucky that I have a fantastic board of directors and a fantastic group of shareholders and a cap table that really enables that success in that whole pharma ecosystem that we have. So the network that we've been able to build over the last, in my career, over 20 years, can really bounce ideas off of people, do back channel checks, a lot of the things that
Mhm.
weren't probably as accessible when I first started off in the career, but now with our network, it's been fantastic. So I'm lucky that I have a good management team that places the same importance I do on that. And then I think the other piece of it that's been important for me is always making sure that an individual understands what their purpose is. So the purpose being aligned with what the company's purpose is very critical, because otherwise then people can easily be kind of flailing in the winds. So that alignment in terms of job responsibilities, role with purpose is a key factor that I always stress, and I spend the time with the team to kind of continue to enable that.